What dark family secret were you let in on once you were old enough? Here's a family story I refer to as the accident. For years, my older sister's by her dad died in an accident when she was 8. She didn't find out until she was a teenager that it wasn't a car accident. It was a painted-the-ceiling with his brain accident. Anyway, fast forward 30-some years, and my sister deals with a load of mental issues and is constantly treating her children poorly. It's Easter Sunday, and our younger sister is introducing her boyfriend to our family, and it's his first meal with us. Think Motor Norman Rockwell-style all-out meal, but with a bunch of kids and family. But my older sister won't stop yelling at her kids. My dad, who has been her only active father, finally snaps and tells her to knock it off. She's a 40-something-year-old woman, pulls the "you're not my dad" line like a bad teenager. That man goes from calm to red, stood up, veins bulging from his head, and absolutely screams, "Yeah!" Exclamation mark. Your child molester dad blew his head off. He never had to deal with your bullcrap. And that's how everyone in our family found out what the accident really was and why it happened. What is the most tragic announcement that was made at your high school? When my daughter was a senior in high school, we were eating dinner as a family when the phone rang. It was the police and they were asking for my daughter. She answered the phone, but we couldn't discern much from her half of the conversation. Just, yes, yes. No, I haven't seen her in about 3 weeks. No. Okay. When she returned to the table, she said that one of her acquaintances from school was missing, and they were calling everyone who might know where she was. Daughter poked at her food for a while and said, "I hope they find her. She's got a new boyfriend, a guy with his own apartment, and they've been doing a lot of cocaine. If she gets arrested, I hope it's before she turns 18, so she'll be treated as a minor. I hope she's not in too much trouble." The next morning, daughter went off to school as usual, and about 9 a.m., I got the most dramatic phone call I've ever received. Daughter was calling from school. She was sobbing. And this is a girl who seldom cries. "Daddy," she said, "Mary's dead." Mary had been on a 2-week drug binge, and her boyfriend beat her to death with a chair. Over the next several days, my daughter's friends were in a daze. "What did you do that made you question your own intelligence?" "I have a key fob for my car. It's set up so that if you hit the lock button once, it locks the car. If you hit the same lock button again, it locks it again and honks the horn, so you know for sure it's locked. The thing is, I always want to be absolutely certain it's locked. But sometimes I come home to my condo super late, and my parking spot is right under someone else's window. I noticed that if the key fob was farther away from the car when I hit the button twice, the honk wasn't as loud. So out of consideration, I would always wait until I was halfway up the stairs to do the double lock honk. What a great neighbor I am. Anyway, after maybe 2+ years of doing this, one time my girlfriend and I were in my condo and I realized I needed something out of my car. I go down there, but when I get there, I realize I had forgotten my keys. Well, I had my phone. So I called my girlfriend and asked if she would stick her arm out the window with the key fob and unlock my car. She mistakenly hit the lock button twice and my car honked, really loudly, even though she was all the way up on the 3rd floor. It was only then I realized the honk was always the same. It only sounded softer when I was farther away because I was farther away. I have a master's degree. I did a short stint as a stripper. One night, an odd guy came to tip me while I was on stage and kept trying to get my number after I managed to get the guy to leave me alone. Another man got out of his booth and threw $20 at me, praising me for how I handled the situation. I finished my set on stage and sat down with that guy to thank him and chat. He had his boss with him, and it turns out his boss loves anime as much as I do, so we hit it off as a part-time stripper. My schedule was inconsistent, but the boss always tried to come by, buy me drinks, and just chat. He never wanted a lap dance or to go to the back room. He only wanted to have conversations with me. We talked about anything and everything, sharing a unique connection. We exchanged numbers shortly before I abruptly left the industry and disappeared for months to try to repair the crappy, abusive relationship I was in. Despite exchanging numbers, we never texted each other when I was in a dark place surrounded by unsupportive people. I texted him out of the blue asking if he wanted to hang out. He was so excited. According to some of the dancers that worked at the club in the months after I vanished, he would check every weekend to see if I was working, and when he didn't see me, he would leave. In any case, one day led to another and now we're engaged. We're still working out the perfect alibi for our families on how we met, but most of our close friends know the whole story. People who've seen nice people finally snap what happened. This woman Mary I worked with was always pleasant and cheerful, said hello in the lunchroom, and was generally well liked. She worked in finance on special projects and mentioned she wanted to retire in a few years. She had been with the company for 15 years. Her boss started pressuring her to complete our annual budget report faster. This report was huge, comprehensive, and a figurative beast. Mary told the boss it would be ready in a couple of weeks per the usual schedule. The boss insisted it needed to be completed within 1 week to give to the higher-ups. Mary explained that it wasn't possible. In response, the boss sent an email to Mary King, a bunch of co-workers and assistant managers, calling Mary out for a poor work ethic and for making the department look bad. Mary said it wasn't possible and didn't appreciate being bullied. She put in her notice to retire by the end of the week, leaving her boss high and dry. She was the only one who could do the budget report in a timely manner, so the department was double fricked. Good for her. Straight guys, what was the gayest experience you've ever had? I had a really long dry spell after breaking up with my first girlfriend. Just no interest from the ladies whatsoever. Having made friends with a bunch of gay men in college, I came to the logical conclusion of, well, if I can't get action from the ladies, Maybe I'm gay. One day, I ended up getting hammered at a party thrown by one of my friends who was known to be a bit forward. He invited me back to his room to take shots after our second shot. He puts his hand on my chest, looks into my eyes, and goes in for a kiss. My brain goes on full, what the shit mode. But I went with it anyway. We made out and nothing. No attraction, no desire, just boredom. I told him that I just wasn't into it, grabbed a beer and toddled home. Turns out I'm not gay, just fricking terrible with women.
I'm done with men. Honestly, I met this guy 7 months ago and we hit it off pretty much immediately. For the last 3-4 months, we have been spending almost all of our free evenings together. The sex is great, and the cuddling in his arms with a good movie or series is even better. He almost always falls asleep in my lap before the movie is finished. And that's one of my favorite moments. Looking at his face and curling his hair around my finger. 2 Fridays ago, I made dinner and he brought wine. He fell asleep watching What We Do in the Shadows. He woke up later and we had the most amazing sex I've ever had. When he was almost there, he said, "God, I love you." I just burst into tears. I know silly and said I loved him too. When I cuddled him afterward, he said it again, and so did I. He left the day after and I haven't heard from him since. So what the fuck? I tried to call and text him several times the following 2 days. Nothing. I know people say all kinds of things when they're climaxing, but WTF, not the tiniest explanation. Just like falling asleep and never seeing the end of any movie. He just left this without seeing the end. People, what's your "if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me" story? I was rock climbing and the guy who was my bilayer for the day was kind of a no surprise. He spent most of his time flirting with a cute girl who was friendly but clearly not interested. He got chewed out by our lead for not paying attention. That didn't seem to make any difference. There I was, about 25 feet off the ground with my rope slack, feeling my hands slipping because I was just running out of steam. He was still distracted and I was getting seriously worried. Having told him 3 times to pick up the slack, I look down and see he's completely ignoring me to chat with this girl again. My mistake was looking down as I reached to readjust my weakening hold. I slip, the rope shoots out of his limp sausage-like fingers and I begin to fall. I know a properly tied off rope shouldn't do that. I don't know how he fucked that up. 2. My only thought is, if I'm going to fall, I'll damn well land on it. Well, I did. I landed straight on his cushy asshole body. I was barely injured. He was taken to the hospital after having 80-odd kilos land on him from 2 stories up. I never happened to see him at that rock climbing club again.
What was the incident at your high school? When I was a freshman in high school, we went into lockdown for an active shooter situation. Cop cars swarmed the building and helicopters flew overhead. It was a whole ordeal, and every student and teacher was obviously scared. There was a rumor going around that the shooter was in the science hallway, which was where I was at the time because of all the rumors. One science teacher decided to make a Molotov cocktail, and another science teacher broke one of his golf clubs in half for self-defense. It turned out the shooters were people with paintball guns, and both of these science teachers were fired the next day. For the rest of my time at that high school, it was always talked about how unfair it was to fire teachers who were, in theory, trying to protect their students from a potential shooter. Teachers, what are your the parent is just as bad as the student stories. Elementary teacher here? We had a student who wouldn't stop stealing things out of other kids' backpacks. We caught him on camera and would call the parents, but they would just say, "No, that's his insert stolen item." We just bought it for him. Then we put him on a positive behavior plan and created intentional lessons about empathy, setting goals, and the difference between wants and needs. Eventually, he had enough positive days in a row to be released from the behavior plan and received a free bike as his incentive for good behavior. They were donated to the school by a local bike shop. The next day, he told me his uncle stole it and pawned it. He went right back to his old behaviors, and it was heartbreaking. What made you lose interest in a person you had a crush on? She took a cat she had adopted and allowed it to run away because it had become noisy at night. I knew she allowed him to run away because a day later he came back smelling of the outside and meowing at her door. I took him in, washed him in the bathroom, and she kept sarcastically saying, "That's your cat now?" "Yeah, he is, and I still have him. He's still annoying and loud, but I love him anyway." It's the ugliest sort of person who selfishly adopts a cat while depressed and then tries to rid themselves of this life. They took responsibility for. Waiters who grate cheese until customers say stop. What's the longest you've ever gone? For my first time at an Olive Garden, I ordered some soup with my pasta. The waitress came over to grate some cheese on top. Unfortunately, nobody had explained to me that I was supposed to tell her when to stop. She started grating and just kept going. After a while, it seemed kind of excessive, but I thought, hey, she's done this plenty of times before. She must know best, right? Anyway, a few seconds later, I'm looking around the table with a look on my face as if to say, "Are you guys seeing what she's doing to my soup?" When I realize that everyone else is staring in mixed disgust and horror, not at the waitress, but at me, I quickly realized my mistake and I'm barely able to get out. That seems pretty good, before sinking into my seat and sticking a spoon into a bowl almost entirely filled with cheese, along with a small, by comparison, amount of soup. What is your worst meeting the dad moment when dating someone new? I've been dating this girl for about 3-4 months, and it was time to meet her family. We made arrangements and went over for dinner. He was nothing short of a prisoner. I still refer to him as the prisoner. The entire night he barely spoke. And when he did, It was only after being directly prompted by his wife or daughters. And it was always one word: answers. The entire dinner was spent with them making jokes at his expense, mocking him while simultaneously spilling intimate personal details of his life. His wife treated him with absolute contempt and disdain, and this attitude was mirrored by his daughters. The only living thing in that house that had any affection for him was the cat. This man spent 30 years working his ass off as a civil engineer to raise a family. His wife never worked a day in her life before or after him. He put 2 daughters through college, paid their fucking rent on top of paying for their cars, and basically everything else. And they treated him like a malfunctioning robot butler. His eyes were completely dead, like a lion who's been in the zoo too long. It scared the fucking shit out of me, so I broke up with her about a week later. It was like a visit from the ghost of Christmas future. My husband and I generally don't have any trust issues. However, his ex-girlfriend cheated on him several times, so obviously some scars still carry over towards our marriage. We have a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son, and we recently found out that I was pregnant. I discovered at first feeling intense nausea. I used a pregnancy test I had left over from the last time I thought I was pregnant, and boom, baby in the oven. I found out on April 2nd and decided to wait until the 25th to tell my husband, thinking it would be the best birthday gift ever. However, pregnancy brain kicked in quickly. I carelessly dropped the test in the trash under some toilet paper, not wanting to touch my pee-covered stick. More than necessary, and forgot that my husband is the one who takes out the trash. Come next morning after the trash is taken out. My husband doesn't say anything, so I think he didn't notice it. Come the 15th, we're grocery shopping when suddenly my husband starts crying and goes to the bathroom. I didn't want to drag the kids inside the men's bathroom, so I call him on the phone and he's still crying. Asked if it's his baby. This man. I'm not about to have this conversation inside of a Fry's, so I managed to get him out of the bathroom. We go outside, I tell him my plan and give him a hug and apologize. And he's laughing so hard he can't breathe and then tells me to never do that again before he apologizes for jumping to conclusions, and then we went to get frozen yogurt food for the soul. Today I messed up by ruining a happy family. My wife and I went to one of our favorite restaurants in town. It's just a bar and grill on the lakeshore where you can sit outside right next to the water whenever the weather is nice. We love sitting out there. One of our favorite parts about sitting out there is the wildlife. From our spot, you can look into the water and see fish swimming around, and ducks love hanging out there. I assume people toss fries or whatever for the ducks, so they made this area an official hangout. On this particular evening, my wife and I were the only ones eating outside, and we saw a pair of ducks, a drake, and a hen swimming offshore. I thought it would be fun to pull up YouTube and make duck noises. I found a video that had a couple of different duck calls, so I started playing it. Lo and behold, the ducks responded. At first they started by making the call back to me, but gradually they moved closer. They ended up on shore and only a few feet away. It was a pretty fun experience. That is, until it got out of hand. Apparently my phone was loud enough for other ducks to hear because another drake swooped in. This other drake had no interest in me. However, he immediately went for the hen. This led to a fight between the 2 drakes. They started quacking at each other and eventually flew off and chased each other around the lake with a hen following them. Unfortunately, the original drake did not win the mating fight, and the new drake flew off with the hen. My wife and I stared at each other in disbelief as this whole thing played out. She still jokingly calls me a homewrecker, and I suppose that's fair. My husband just fat-shamed our daughter, and I'm beyond livid. We were eating dinner. Then my 13-year-old daughter got up to grab a plate from a top cabinet. She couldn't reach it and complained. My husband said, "Well, you couldn't reach the cabinet because you're fat." My daughter was stunned. He had made comments about her weight before, but never outright called her fat. She replied, "What does height have to do with weight?" He said, "The fatter you are, the shorter you get. You've put on a serious amount of weight and should really do something about it before it's too late." This set me off. Our daughter rushed out crying and refused to finish her dinner. He said, "Well, that's a start." When I told him he caused her to miss dinner, we had a huge fight, and he accused me of coddling her rather than actually looking after her the way he does. She's in her room right now, still crying from what he said. I'm beyond livid. I'm so mad because I don't want her to think that her worth is tied to her weight or physical appearance. I hate how he basically destroyed her self-esteem and made her cry. I embarrassed my parents online to get revenge. My parents or any of my family members don't really seem to respect me. Last week, my favorite cousin was getting married, and I was taking pictures at his wedding. I wasn't getting paid as much as I usually do on outside weddings, but I was okay with it. During the formal pictures with the wedding party, everything went great, and I got a lot of good shot. But when it was time to take pictures of different family groups with the couple, things got frustrating. People kept talking and looking away from the camera. I politely reminded them that the camera was the big black thing on the tripod, but they told me to stop being a smartass and that they knew what a camera was. I asked my wife to record a video of everyone being rude to me. Later, my cousin loved all the pictures from their wedding except the family photos. But then my family started complaining about the bad pictures on my social media. I explained that I had tried to tell them where to look, but they said I should have waited for them to be ready. So I started posting short video clips of them being rude to me. I found my lost wedding dress in my friend's home. My husband and I were fixing up our house, and I didn't want my wedding dress to get damaged or lost during the renovations. We ended up losing a few things, so my friend offered to keep the dress in her closet until we were done. But after we finished, I asked her for the dress back. She kept saying she would get it to me, but she never did. I kept asking, but she always had some excuse. It felt strange. Now my sister is getting married and wanted to wear the dress. It was our mom's dress, and we had always planned to share it. I told my friend I needed it back, but she said she couldn't find it. I thought that was odd. How does a dress just disappear? She apologized and offered to pay me for it, but I said no. The dress had sentimental value, and I felt awful that my sister couldn't wear it. When my friend and her husband went on a vacation, they told me to water their plants and feed their dogs. And while I was there, I decided to look for the dress myself. After searching, I found the dress. I texted her saying I found the dress, but instead of being happy, she said I have no right to go through her closet. I kicked my daughter out for getting married. My daughter, Rose, 19, was always a smart girl. She did well in school and got a full ride to a great college that is close to our home. But the problem is, she got a new boyfriend a few months ago who I don't like at all. I can smell the BS. He constantly lets her down, but covers it up with a big smile and grand promises. Despite my warnings, they're still dating. And now she's pregnant. I offered to pay for the abortion and take a few days off work to take her and help her recover, but she refused my offer. She said she is going to marry her boyfriend and they'll be one big, happy family. Her boyfriend wants to move into my house and she'll drop out of school while he works to support them. He's a bartender. I laughed at this idea, which made her mad. She told me that since he can't move in, I'll need to step up and help with the baby more. I never saw her being a sensitive child before, and I don't know where this all has come from. I flat out told her that if she thinks she's grown enough to have and raise a child and get married, then she needs to move out soon and manage being an adult. I kicked my parents out of my apartment. My relationship with my parents has always been tough since my mom is an immature control freak and my father enables her. They came out to visit me a few days ago and I let them stay in my apartment. My mom immediately took control of everything. She rearranged my kitchen, demanded to know everything I was doing, and even told me what food I could eat. This isn't uncommon in Asian families, so I put up with it. I got back from work yesterday to find the water turned off in the apartment. It happens sometimes, but it's still annoying, and I made the mistake of complaining about it in front of my mom. She accused me of throwing a tantrum for not feeling the way she wanted me to. I snapped back that I was allowed to feel however I wanted. My mom got mad and started giving me the silent treatment like a child. This continued through the night until this morning, and I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. I told her that if she's just going to ignore me the whole time, then there's no point in her coming to visit me at all. Clearly, she had had enough and agreed. Later, she disrespected me for not living my life the way she wanted me to. My mom thinks my wife is an object. My wife has been struggling to find a job, but my mom has a best friend named Alex, who I used to think was a nice guy. But I was completely wrong. My mom contacted Alex about my wife and he hired her to work for him. My wife's moods began changing and she became distant. I finally got her to confess what was wrong and she told me about everything Alex had been doing to her. He made degrading, sexist jokes, joked about wanting her to give him a blowjob, and every time she made a mistake at work, he would talk about disciplining her. He even made her and his secretary line up against a wall and took his belt off, but he never touched them. I was furious and wanted to go and end him with my bare hands. I told her to report it, but she was scared. So I called my mom. My mom was mad and she got Alex to stop. She also asked my wife if she wanted to get transferred, so she didn't have to work for him. But my mom and Alex remained best friends because she values their friendship. My wife told me she couldn't have my mom in her life anymore if she was going to be close to Alex, my girlfriend, making me feel worthless. My girlfriend and I are completely opposite. I'm more of a socially awkward guy, but she is a social butterfly. So yesterday, after a busy week, I was really looking forward to cooking dinner and relaxing with her. She had a plan to visit a new restaurant with her friends for breakfast, so we planned to have dinner together at 7 p.m., which should have been way more than enough time for her to attend her plans with her friends and have dinner with me at my place. But their simple breakfast plan turned into something more. She and her friends decided to hit a bar, which led to more bars turning into a full day of bar hopping. She kept texting me, saying she'd be home in time, but I could tell she was pretty drunk from her texts. I started cooking, but when I checked her Snap story, I saw she was taking shots at a bar in a completely different neighborhood. I was getting increasingly annoyed, thinking she'd be too hammered for the night we had planned. Frustrated, I packed up the dinner and called my friends to play PlayStation. But when she got back at around midnight, she called me rude for canceling our dinner night. Am I the a-hole for faking sleep all night to see if my wife is lying? For the past couple of months, my wife has been complaining about our cats. She's been claiming that the cats wake her up constantly, and that she's frustrated every night because she has to get up and open the door for the cats. The cats keep making noises or the cats keep jumping on her. It got to the point where she started saying she wants me to get rid of them. I told her I've never seen or heard any of this, but she claims I sleep through it all. She kept telling me she was getting less and less sleep and kept acting aggressive, blaming lack of sleep on the cats and that if I didn't get rid of them, she'd leave me. I legitimately started considering giving the cats to my sister until I noticed something. One morning, she claims she had gotten up multiple times throughout the night to help the cats. She listed a bunch of times. I thought it was weird because I had been up until 4 a.m., and she claimed that she got up at 1 a.m. to open the door for them and a few times around 3 a.m. because they were meowing and jumping on her. I was in the bedroom the entire time while she slept, and I know none of that happened. Things weren't adding up, so I decided to run a test. I waited until she said she was going to bed. Then I let the cats out of our bedroom, lowered my phone brightness, and faked going to sleep. I just lay there in bed for the entire night bored, but I definitely did not fall asleep. I made sure to make timestamps every 30 minutes on my phone through Discord just to be sure. I marked down every noise my cats made. One cat jumped down from something and made a slight sound at 3:18 a.m., and another ate food quietly by the bedroom door at 4:57 a.m. Other than that, nothing happened. Sure enough, my wife slept from 11 p.m. until 9 a.m., and that morning she claimed she had woken up at least 7 times to open doors and from cat noises and cats jumping on her. At this point, I was pissed because she was clearly lying to me. I was exhausted and fed up with the lies, so I just bluntly called her out on it. I told her, "That's funny. I stayed up all night to monitor the cats, and they weren't even in the room at all last night. I have timestamps and everything. So you've been lying to me and trying to convince me to get rid of my cat? Why?" She sat there quietly, shaking and looking angry, then left without answering. She returned hours later and ignored me. When I asked her how I'm the bad guy in this situation, she finally said that by lying about sleeping and staying up all night, just to see if she was lying and making timestamps, as if I were an investigator. I was going too far and acting like an obsessive asshole. I did it because she was threatening to make me get rid of my cats, or she'd leave, and her claims didn't add up. So am I an obsessive asshole? My husband lied about having kids. I have no desire to give birth to a child, and I just want to live child-free for the rest of my life. But I married my husband last year and did not know he had any children until recently. I have my own business and I travel for work. I also travel a lot to enjoy my life, which isn't a problem since I have amazing pay for very few active working hours. I have a joint account with my husband for bills, and we also have our own separate accounts for savings and fun money. He sat me down recently and told me he hadn't been completely honest with me and revealed he has 2 children. Currently, he's paying for all the expenses for both of his kids. However, it dips into his fund money and he wants to be able to have fun like me. So he said he would fight for 50-50 custody, meaning he will split the expenses with their mom, and also they will live with us for half of the month. I was furious he had lied to me and was even more angry when he told me he wanted 50-50. He works 12 to 16-hour shifts as a nurse, and that would mean I would have to take care of the children when I'm not working. My wife looks like an alien and now she hates me. My wife recently had plastic surgery, lip fillers, facelift, liposuction, the works. I was always against it, but at the end of the day, it was her body and her choice. Well, she's all healed up now and I really can't stand how she looks. Her face and body look horrible. It gives me uncanny valley vibes and it totally freaks me out. She doesn't look like the woman I married. I've tried being intimate with her, but I can barely look at her and have to turn the lights off. I've been trying to avoid it as much as I can ever since. Eventually, she noticed that I wasn't acting like I used to around her and confronted me. I tried telling her that work has been tough and I just haven't been in the mood lately, but she didn't believe me. She started going through my phone and accusing me of cheating. She wouldn't stop, so eventually I had enough and told her the truth. I looked her in the eye and told her that I don't find her attractive anymore since the surgery, and that she reminds me of the alien from the movie The Fifth Element that made her cry. Now her whole family hates me for not finding her attractive. What is your, "oh shit, I've got to get the hell out of here right now" story? I was leaving for work at 5:30 a.m., while it was still dark. I locked the inside door handle and walked out, pulling the door closed behind me. As I turned around to walk off the porch toward my car, I saw 4 men jump out of a van and start coming toward me. The street was otherwise empty. My heart was pounding, and I felt panic start as I was digging in my big messy purse for my keys to unlock the door and get back into my house the whole time. I'm just thinking they're going to grab me, shove me in the van, and kill me. I was able to get back into my house before they made it to me, but it scared the shit out of me. Turns out they were immigration officers looking for someone who used to live in our house, and that is standard practice for them if they think the suspect will run. After I graduated from college, I finally landed an interview with a guy who was starting his own company. The economy was bad and I so wanted a job. I went in for an interview and quickly noticed that he double-locked the door behind me. It was a small office in a strip mall. I immediately started to panic and then realized that no one else was there. He had me sit down and 2 questions into the interview. He tried to put his hand up my skirt. I was wearing a business skirt suit. I got up and ran, and thankfully was able to open the locks and get out of there. My mom accompanied me to every interview after that for a while. My friend and I met at Waffle House for lunch. A guy came into the restaurant looking for a piece of paper that he had accidentally left on a table. The waitress didn't know where the paper was and might have thrown it away. The guy got upset, saying the paper was important and he was going home to get his gun stored under his mattress. My friend and I quickly paid our check and got the heck out of the restaurant. I worked for an agency that helps people with their daily tasks for home health care. I had a man whose insurance prohibited personal care like a shower. He was very upset during my visit when I declined his request for bathing. I felt bad at first, but soon the man became very angry with me. He accused me of all kinds of things and started pacing from room to room as if he were looking for something between that and his spit-yelling rage. I slipped out of the house and drove to a safer place. I reported the incident to my employer and later found out that this person is a sex offender who had previously raped another woman. Who knows what he was planning that day? Maybe nothing, but I'm glad I left. I lived in South Everett, Washington for a couple of years. I was walking home from the bus stop to my apartment, which took me behind the Home Depot. Suddenly, a van started following me. I heard the side door slide open and looked behind me to see a man with the top half of his body hanging out of the slider door, looking at me. I took off, running towards my apartment, literally running as far as I could. The van started going faster. By chance, a guy was pulling out of the driveway of my apartment complex, sees me running for my life, and stops. The van immediately turns around and speeds off. The guy asks if I'm okay. I ask him to just stay there and please watch me walk into my apartment, which was the building next to his. He did, thank God. I started carrying mace and a very large knife. The next day, my ex-husband came into our bedroom where I was sleeping and screamed into my ear, "You and your mom need to stop playing mind games with me. Understand?" I didn't speak to him much to not set him off, and he hadn't spoken to my mom in 3 months without looking at him. I walked downstairs in the dark to sleep on the couch as I was laying down. A big ceramic lamp flew by my head and smashed against the wall. He followed me downstairs, and I didn't hear him because the dogs came with me and their collars jingled loud enough that I couldn't hear him. He'd been abusive, but after throwing a heavy lamp at my head in the dark, I knew he'd kill me. I couldn't leave that night because he took my keys, but I ran away to a safe house as soon as he left the house. My attention-seeking wife embarrassing me online. I'm an introverted person. I don't use social media, and while I don't stop my wife from sharing pictures of me, I prefer to stay out of the spotlight. But she likes to post about every small thing happening in our life. Recently, I was told I have a very curable type of skin cancer. Since they caught it early, I wasn't scared or nervous, but I told my wife anyway. She was worried, but I explained what the doctor said and told her not to tell our kids because they might not fully understand. She agreed to keep it a secret, but a week later, my dad called to ask about my cancer. I found out that my wife had posted about it on Facebook, even though she agreed to keep it private. She said, "You didn't tell me not to post it. You just told me to not tell anyone." I was upset because she knew I didn't want that shared with everyone. That weekend, I came home to a surprise remission party. I was embarrassed because she knows I don't like attention. I lied and said I needed to go back to work to avoid the party, but my wife told everyone I was lying and her family shouted at me. My husband wants to shoot my baby. My husband owns firearms and works in law enforcement and is trained to handle them safely. They stay in a locked safe at home, and he has never once played around with them. I am currently 23 weeks pregnant with our first baby, and we have been married for 3 years, and he is 8 years older than me. What he did to our baby yesterday terrified me. At first, I wasn't doing anything, but just simply walking through the kitchen as I noticed my husband at the kitchen counter looking at one of the firearms. I didn't say anything, but I looked over at him, wondering what he was doing. He had gotten home from work, and right before this, we talked for a bit. We had dinner and I took a shower. Everything was good and normal as I looked at him. My husband looked up at me and stared for a second, blinked, and then picked the gun up and pointed it at my tummy with a completely straight face. My heart dropped, of course, and I smacked the gun down. My husband then started laughing, but the split second of pure seriousness on his face was terrifying. I asked him why the F he did that, and he said, "Do you think it will scare him?" My mom called me selfish for getting married. I'm getting married in 2 months, and my fiancé and I have been planning the wedding for over a year. We've booked the venue, caterers, flowers, and photographer. Everything is set. Deposits are paid, and now we're just counting down the days. Recently, my younger brother got accepted into a really competitive internship program. He's super excited, and I'm really happy for him. But the problem is, it starts the same week as my wedding. He told me he can't come anymore. I was sad, but I figured we'd move on. Then he asked if I'd change the wedding date. At first, I thought he was just joking with me, but he was serious. He said, "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me, and I don't want to miss your wedding, but I can't be in 2 places at once." I told him I can't change the date. Everything is already planned, and our guests have invitations. Some have even made travel plans. Changing it now would be a huge mess, and I don't think we could find another date that works. My brother got upset and said I care more about the wedding than his future, and my mom called me selfish for not considering his problems. My mother-in-law wants to see me give birth. My mother-in-law isn't very nice and always tries to get her way. None of her daughters let her be with them when they had their babies. But now I'm her last chance to see a grandchild being born, so she's forcing me to let her see me giving birth. I really don't want her in the room. She's always judged me because I have tattoos, and I don't want to be a stay-at-home wife. I have a lot of tattoos, even in places that are private, and that's none of her business. My husband is our youngest son, and he used to be a good husband. He has stood up for me many times when she tried to control our wedding. He said no when she wanted us to move to his hometown where I wouldn't find a job. He refused her again. He knows my career is important too. Now she's telling him that all she wants is to see her grandchild being born, just like her friends have. My husband is starting to feel guilty. So I told him that the only way I'd agree is if my dad could watch him get a colonoscopy. My dad would need a ride anyway, so it made sense. I offered to change it to me, watching my mother-in-law get a Brazilian wax, and she hasn't called me since.